anybody going through burnout, I would say one of the symptoms that gets quickly overlooked is, and this can be for caregivers, this can be for any leader, anybody at all, your empathy starts to deplete. And if you start, and maybe you're not voicing it out loud, but if you start to hear those thoughts, then you also start to think something's changing.
Welcome to The Change Effect, the podcast that helps you turn life transitions into powerful new beginnings. One story, one shift, one breakthrough at a time. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, leadership coach, and change strategist who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders break through barriers to create success on their own terms. I now work with women to step into change to create a life they love. Whether you're putting yourself at the center of your own story, redefining success, or making a power pivot in your life, career, or business, you're in the right place. Each week, we dive into conversations with trailblazers, changemakers, and everyday women experiencing the ripple effects that come from overcoming the fear and doing it anyway, providing actionable steps, practical strategies, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So if you're ready to step up and become unstoppable, buckle up and let's get started. One of the themes we've explored on this podcast is the idea that ambition is ever evolving. The definition of success that served us in one season of life doesn't always fit the next, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is give ourselves permission to redefine it. Our guest today, Caru Jones, knows this path only too well. With more than 20 years of global experience across coaching, HR, leadership, and talent development, Caru has partnered with leaders at every level during pivotal moments of change, growth, and reinvention. A few years ago, Caru made a significant pivot of her own, leaving a successful corporate career to build a business around the work she felt called to do. She is now an executive coach, leadership expert, and founder of Soulfulness Philosophy, helping accomplished women and leaders create success that feels sustainable and deeply fulfilling. Today, we're discussing her leap into entrepreneurship, how we define ourselves and our ambition, navigating burnout, and giving ourselves the grace to evolve into who we're meant to become. Caru, I am so excited to have you here with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and always to be in conversation with you.
Well, it is so fun. And here's what we're going to just disclose before we get started that Caru and I have known each other for many years. It's such a treat to have you here today to even just get some answers to some of my questions, because I feel like you and I have crossed paths and we kind of went on our own way for a long time, even though we've stayed connected. So I'm really doubly excited to talk to you today. So welcome. And usually we just kind of get started with, give me a little bit of background, just, nothing, you don't have to go back to age 2, but, just a little bit of background. And then we'll talk about your career trajectory and kind of go from there.
I'll do a little bit of personal background to start off with, which I know people don't often like, but I think it gives a lot of context to who I am. So I am from the Bahamas, and my name is spelled funky. It's spelled Caru, but it is a Welsh word. It means love. My father's from Wales, and so that's where that comes from. And I went to university in Canada and then made my way over to London, England, where you and I first started connecting because we both worked at an agency together. And then I moved to New York after you hired me to come over to New York, which I so appreciated. And I've been here in New York ever since. My career was very fortuitous and also something where I just felt I had to go with where the universe was guiding me. I thought I was going to become a psychologist. I realized that I empathized a little bit too much and that would be really hard for me. But I tapped into what my skills were, my strengths were, and thought HR could be an interesting avenue for that. But I also thought I wanted to go over to London, England and really explore it and just see what I could do. And I was interviewing at the time, a new media agency, which was the agency where we ended up, AKQA. And it was for the executive assistant of the managing director. And he had gotten called out the last minute on a client meeting and ended up me interviewing with the HR director. And we had a wonderful conversation. It wasn't even an interview. It was a wonderful conversation. At the end of it, she said, is there anything else you would be interested in? Because of course I was portraying myself as an executive assistant. That's what I was focusing on. And I said, well, I've been really interested in getting into HR, but everybody's told me you need HR experience to get into HR. And that just seems like an impossible battle to fight. And she said, our HR assistant was supposed to show up today. Would you like the job?
No way.
Absolutely.
See, I never heard that story before.
Yeah.
Okay, that is so serendipitous, first of all.
Yeah.
That you just sort of stumbled into it. And I mean, and to know that you had the career there that you had, which we will go into, but that's amazing. And so did you got started? You jumped right in?
I jumped right in. I mean, no lie, my dad had come over 2 weeks after I'd moved to London. And I remember I was in Paddington Station. I got the offer. He was calling me up to say, okay, when, are you on your way to Wales? And we were going to meet in Wales. And I said, Dad, guess what? And he's like, what? I got a job.
That is amazing. Like, really?
So I'm not taking you home to your mother.
My God. Yeah. So had you been in London for a long time or just for a little while?
No, it was literally 2 weeks. It was
wow. Okay.
A week of settle in, a week of, kind of fun plus job search. And
yes.
I jumped right into it.
Oh my gosh. See, well, isn't that sort of telling, right? When you think about your career there, that was a long career that you had there. So this is what's fascinating to me. And I'm only making this commentary because as we talk, this will come out. But Carrie, I have known you to be always, and you mentioned, I hired you. We had a very interesting way of that all came about, where you came over and basically Carrie and I met in a train station and did the interview. And I was like, you're hired, you're coming. And then she was New York bound. So I feel like your career has had a little bit of that, right? The little bit of like serendipity and just things that you've flowed from one thing to the next. So as we talk through this, I just want to say, like, as I've watched you grow in your career, this makes tons of sense to me in terms of where you have evolved into now. So anyways, okay, so keep going.
So 5 years then in a very interesting, very challenging, very difficult, very rewarding role. And I think what was interesting about my upbringing in the HR side of things is that I didn't have that HR training. And I defaulted to what my strengths were. And that was deep empathy, good listening, being able to be very attentive, following up with people, things like that really allowed me to establish a lot of wonderful people relationships. And then after 5 years in London, went over to New York and just absolutely loved my time there. While I was in London, I experienced a very serious bout of burnout. And what happened to recover from that was what I call scaffolding. We looked at all the external things that helped to support me. And I got a team, I got a manager, I got, stuff taken off my plate and things that allowed me to then take a breath and then continue on. But then that was the problem. I continued on with all of my normal ways of operating, which was hardworking, overworking, hyperachieving, people pleasing, like all of those tendencies. When I moved to New York, it was new, it was fresh. I threw myself right in. It was amazing. And fast forward several years, and I was in another bout of very terrible burnout. I literally told my boss my soul was slowly dying. And what I realized was that this time scaffolding wouldn't support me for a long time. Fool me once, right? And fool me twice. And so what was it? How was I going to be able to recover from that? And it was all the internal stuff. My own internal operating system had to change.
Do you remember a feeling when it was like, okay, I've got to stop and take a moment here?
It was the breakdown.
Yeah.
And so there's a talk that I do called Ambition Without Self-Abandonment. And I start that talk with underlying concept that the most dangerous part of burnout is when it still looks successful. And
so good.
That's the problem.
Yes.
It is, you are succeeding. All of those people pleasing or hyperachieving or controlling or avoiding, whatever our tendencies are, they keep us going. We are where we are because of those things. Thank you very much, self-saboteurs. And now here we are. But there isn't one point in time often, right? You think about Arianna Huffington. She talks about her major breakdown and all because of burnout. So it was a moment where, in fact, I was reporting into the finance director at the time. This was in London. I was very junior, and I had so much on my shoulders. And there was a moment of him both giving me praise and trying to deliver some feedback. The praise was, "You're doing amazing." The feedback was, "You're carrying too much and it's not sustainable. We can all see it. We can all feel it." What happened in my mind was, oh my God, nobody else can see that I'm stressed. I'm supposed to be helping everybody else to not be stressed.
Yes.
And I had a breakdown. And so that was that turning point. The other point, because I had gone through burnout before, I could understand some of the symptoms that were happening. And anybody going through burnout, I would say one of the symptoms that gets quickly overlooked is, and this can be for caregivers, this can be for any leader, anybody at all, your empathy starts to deplete. And if you start, and maybe you're not voicing it out loud, but if you start to hear those thoughts, then you also start to think something's changing.
Well, and that's a really good point that you brought up, because I have had multiple conversations lately about how we it's like we run in we have these parallel lives. We have our work life, our life at work, and then we have our internal life. You had that initial, the breakdown that you're saying, which was burnout induced, right? Second one sounds a little bit more personal, a little bit more identity driven, of like, is this sustainable, first of all? And I feel like there's that moment in time where we ask ourselves that question, and then we start to kind of look at the internal piece. And it just, I don't think it comes early in our careers. I don't know. I don't want to judge on that, because I think people experience things at different times. But it sounds like you had it was almost like a more informed signal coming at that point. Not that you necessarily maybe knew all the answers right there in the moment, but there's something nudging you to take a closer look.
Yeah. And a lot of that was inspired possible because I started going to Reiki. I didn't quite know what was going on, but I knew that coming home and being in tears every night was not sustainable. I knew that waking up and showering and then going back to my couch dripping wet in tears and then pulling myself together to go into work was not sustainable. And so I started going to Reiki, and I went to Reiki because I thought that it was the practice of just sucking negative juju out of you. And that's not it.
We wish, yeah.
It helps to shift your energy. And what was happening though, is I was really giving an hour of guided meditation. And I wasn't even going like every day or every week or anything like that. I was trying to remember this the other day. I think I was going every 3 weeks, and it was just because of the cost at the time. And after the third session though, that's when I had enough space within me. That's when I had quieted all the voice within me to be able to even say that I wanted something different. And then to be able to have my soul say what that thing was. And I remember the Reiki specialist, she was up at my head at the time, and she just asked me, she said, "What do you love about your job?" I said, "Coaching." That is the thing. And it just came out of me. There was no thinking, nothing. It just came from my heart and my soul.
So, okay. So that's a pretty pivotal moment though, where did it make you, I mean, granted, it being integral to what you do, because you were always a fascinating coach and a fabulous coach. And that was obviously always your strong suit, but to have that and hear yourself say it, I am going to move out of where I am now into something different.
That was definitely the seed.
Yeah.
And it hit me so, not hard, but I mean, so the place where the Reiki specialist was that I saw was close by the Ace Hotel. And there used to be a bar there called John Dory, or a restaurant there called John Dory. And I went there right afterwards, and I had a glass of wine, and I just sat with this word, like coaching. Yes. And it was really nice to let it percolate and settle a bit and think a little bit more about that. Then it just had me fired up, and I just got really curious. I know a bunch of coaches. I've hired a bunch of coaches.
Of course, yes.
How about I have a conversation with them and see what it's like being a coach and where that goes. And then you have one conversation that leads you to another conversation that leads you to another. And that's what led me to think, okay, I definitely want to get certified, and I want to do this for myself. And then I'll see what the next step is. And then the next step was, this is me. I mean, goodness me, you should have seen it. The first training session. So CTI is the certification that I did. Mm-hmm. And they were in person. I think that they've gone back to in person after the pandemic, but I'm not sure. But we were blessed with being able to do 2.5 days in person. I left with my cheeks hurting. I was just smiling the whole time. These were my people. I just like took it all in. And then it was really interesting because I did the training just back to back to back immediately. You can spread it out if you want to, but you do 1 month and then you come back the next month, you do the next module, etc. And the next time I came back, it was a very different feeling. Really? It was an unsettled, it was a bit of a upset feeling. I felt scared, a little scared, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was a day and a half into it. Now, the best part of coaching certification is you're getting coached at the same time too. So you're getting really curious about yourself.
Totally.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. And after the day and a half, I was able to get in touch with what it was. And there were 25 people in each of the training sessions we went in. When I went into this second training session, there were 3 people that had been to my previous training session. Mm-hmm. Everybody else was new. And in my head, what was going on was, is this a career? Like, there are a whole other new people here. Maybe this is an oversaturated thing. Could I even make this a possibility for myself? Once I got in touch with that, then I could have a conversation with it. Then it was information, and it was no longer a fear.
Well, and I've often said this, and this has shown up in my life. This may or may not have shown up in your life yet or before, but have you ever had that feeling before you step into something, whether it was when you met your husband now, or when you go into a relationship with someone, or you're partnering with somebody in business or whatever, and it's that moment before stepping into it that you it's like a little bit of a mini freak out. And I always look at those things now as like, okay, that is a sign. That's a sign to me that either I'm going to shift into something that I'm meant to shift into. But anyway, I look at this, it's going to be significant. Like anyway. And what I just thought of as you were talking about when coaching came up, and then you kind of felt like you were like home, you're like, oh my gosh, these are like my people. But I also think it's so interesting how, think of like your past experience and all of the career that led up to this was like an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Because think about it. And I know this, you and I were in the same environment. We know you were coaching constantly. There was people coming in, talking to you all the time about different things. You were problem solving. You were bing, bing, bing all the time. But I think in a way that it's like you kind of got to the core of that.
Yeah.
In terms of your decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Goodness. Like a million different thoughts just came up for me. So.
Oh no.
You might need to guide the next prompt because I can take us in a million different directions.
But okay, but this is now you had left AKQ. I know you went and you kind of had a bit of a detour, then came back. You were HR director at that time. Yep. When you decided to finally leave, like what did that look like? Just in terms of, was it just a decision you made and you picked the date and you left, or how did that go?
Yeah, and that's everybody operates different, and I think that's just that's one way that I operate, and that I have made a decision. I laugh all the time because my husband's very different. So if we talk about, let's watch a movie at night, and then we talk about the different types of movies, and we land on this one, and then we sit down, and then he's searching for different movies. I'm like, wait a second, wasn't a decision made? And that's like part of that consistency part within me. I'm like, no, a decision's made. Let's move towards that. And when I know I can always change. I know I can always pivot. I know I have choices at the different forks as well. Mm-hmm. And so I am blessed, and I understand that can be a challenge for some people, that they think about the next step and how to get there. But what if this negative thing happens, or what if this challenging thing happens? And sure, those thoughts certainly come up for me, but I think also there's a solidness but I have to make a decision. Otherwise I'm paralyzed. So let me just make this decision, and then I'll figure out the next step,
And you said you have a discussion. You kind of had a discussion with yourself about what came up, because you jumped to very tactical, very like, okay, well, is this like a viable profession? I mean, that's a very tactical question to ask.
Yeah.
And it's also a safety thing, right? Because we like to always,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that you were like, oh, well, now that it's up and out, now I can actually have a discussion with myself about this, or actually like observe what's happening. And that's, I think the pivotal thing for people is like, however it shows up and wherever you end up, how can you really extract what you need to be listening to in that moment?
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
absolutely. And okay, well, I'm in New York, and I am not a Knicks fan. I'm certainly a bandwagon fan. But like that, like it just connects to, first I have conversations with myself all the time. So let's just normalize that. And
let's just put it out there, because
right?
Yes.
But so something that Jalen Brunson had said, which was that, you can hear the worst case scenario. Of course he had doubts, and he thought that, but then you'd go and you do something about it. Right. And I so appreciated that thinking, and I'm so admire the comeback that the Knicks had, and the ability to listen to the best possible scenario. And if you think about like the subject of ambition, how do you sustain that? How do you sustain that when it is something that there's so many roadblocks in front of you, or you feel like you really are so far behind? Mm-hmm. And it's the choice, and we all have the choice. Which voice do I listen to?
Yes.
And it's not to live in like a land of delirium or anything like that, but you can choose, do I listen to this voice that keeps me stuck, or keeps me fearful, or keeps me anxious? Or can I listen to this voice that allows for creativity and possibility? And how do I move a little bit closer to that?
Well, and that, I think you just gave permission to a lot of people in saying that, in terms of how do I move towards something that feels right without having to have it be my purpose, like I'm stepping into this brand new thing, because that's what we all like to do, right? And especially those of us that we're high performing people in our jobs, right? We now come out, we're in a completely different construct. And now it's like, well, I have to have all the answers, right? I have to figure out, well, where am I going to be in the next 2 years? And once you can lean into and really like open yourself up to the possibility, it's like, it's a game changer. To me, it was, at least. I just was like, whoa, okay, this isn't a path that I have to be on and do perfectly. This is something I need to explore and listen to myself, because that's the intuition too, that I think we push down a lot. Like, I know I did when I was in the corporate world for many, many years. That was my MO. It's like, I kind of had to do that in a lot of ways. So it became my default. So I just think that gives people permission to follow. It's kind of like just their breadcrumbs, like follow the breadcrumbs. That's sometimes the best answer.
And I think that's so important, whether corporate, but also whether professional or whether personal.
Yes.
And
yes.
I was hosting a talk in London, and there was actually a really good friend of mine from like childhood who came, and she had this aha moment of how she had been telling herself for the longest time that she wasn't ambitious. Now, this is a woman who is an amazing mother, who wanted to become a mother, who is a mother, and also she has an amazing career. What she does is absolutely fantastic and so rewarding, and you can feel the immediate impact. Mm-hmm. And she was telling herself she wasn't ambitious because she felt she was holding herself back to be a mom. Once she sat there with that, she was able to understand that she had permission to even redefine what ambition meant for her right now. And it's both personal and professional. And, you were saying about sort of that business side and like that internal side blending together. And that's where my philosophy of the soulfulness comes from. That's my number one core value. And it's a feeling. It's a feeling of aliveness and freedom and ambition as well, balanced with, you could be absolutely exhausted and still have your soul feel full, because you understand that right now in this chapter, this is what this means for me. This is where I want to get to. This is what I want to do. And it's rewarding and fulfilling.
I love that. And I feel like the word ambition is interesting, isn't it? It's really, it can be a really loaded word. So like when we think of ambition, I'm going to give you my old definition of ambition. I used to think if I would see somebody in my environment that was like very strategic in who they were talking to and all that, it was like, oh, he or she is very ambitious. Yeah. And in my mind, that was actually not a positive. It is not until later in life that I realized like ambition has so many different faces to it. It just does.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. Like how do you, because I know that's like the core of your work.
Yeah.
What is,
yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I love that you said that too, because I also had a negative connotation of ambition. And it was quite a judgy one on my behalf too, of like, if somebody is kind of like pushing things aside, driving constantly, like that was my definition of ambition. So I really didn't ever define myself as ambitious. Oh, I'm not ambitious. Like, I'm not going to just like push it aside and just try to get whatever it is. But so, I mean, my definition of ambition truly is moving towards that feeling of feeling like my soul is full.
Yes.
Because I know I can trust myself. Like you had said, we are high achievers. I am a recovering hyperachiever. And I'm a hard worker. I have so much passion for coaching and for helping people to reach their true potential. And so I'm always going to be working towards that. And you said earlier, it's like permission to not necessarily have to have a calling or purpose or anything as well. And I do get that. And I think that there is something about the ambition to happiness is a choice. So I can't really say happiness, but the ambition to live that fulfilled life, which might not sometimes be sexy, might not sometimes be super competitive or even corporate. But if you are ambitious to claim what you want your life to be, that's being ambitious.
Right.
I think that the definition is an old definition and still does very much focus on the professional side of things. But at the heart of it truly is like a drive to get to a goal. And whatever that goal is, you define it.
Well, and I think what's fascinating too is how you talk about, I mean, and I know I've worked with you, you are a very hard worker. You are somebody that is, and have achieved a lot because of it. Right. And that becomes our barometer. We have the reward system that we're used to, and then that shifts a little bit when we're deciding to go into something different. But I also think that the ambition towards fulfillment, like if I see myself looking at you, knowing who you are, it almost feels like driving toward that ambition that you have now has grounded you in a sense. You're being of service, but you're being of service at a very deep level now. But now it's really coming from this internal place that's lived experience, that is an understanding of doubt, that is the feeling of burnout, knowing what that is all about. And how do I apply that and help women like catch it before that starts to become a problem? And I just feel like, so it's almost like there's an ambition toward that, but there's also this evolution that's happening within you in real time. And the more you do it, the more I don't know. I just think that it's a grounding process for a lot of people, regardless of where they are in their career and where they're going. When you work with women, I know that you do a lot of work with corporate women. Where do you think women fall with that? Like when you talk about it, do you feel like it's a word that people are comfortable with? I mean, I'm just curious because I think ambition it's like money. It's a loaded topic.
It is. And more women are ready to claim it now than I would say, let's call it 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It could be, and I'm just full disclosure, it could be the women that I'm working with. It could be, I do work with a lot of high achieving. Like you said, it is a mixed bag. There are women who are still in the corporate world. There are women who are solopreneurs, who are entrepreneurs, who are on the creative pursuits, things like that. And so very high achieving as well. And they do have goals, but also a large portion don't yet know.
Right.
And that's also where I love that redefining. I've got to where I am right now. And that knowing something doesn't feel quite right. That belief, I know I want something better for myself. Better doesn't mean I have to leave this, corporate world or even the company or the role or anything like that. But there's something that feels off within me and I'm ready to claim what feels right.
Yeah.
And that space, I think, is more welcoming now. Again, it could be the type of women I work with, could be the level, could be an age thing. But you know what? Some of my clients have, I've started working with, and some clients I've been working with for the past 7 years, which have been fantastic. And it's been amazing to see what they have been able to accomplish year after year after year. And some of my clients are very young too. So I don't think it's an age thing.
I don't either. I think, and this is interesting that you bring it up, because when I think of how women define success now, it's very different. And we have a generation that we've come up with. You're probably a little bit, maybe that's a generation that I was in, your generation. We've got millennials. We've got the new generation coming up. But it feels like since probably the early 90s, right? Women were like, you're going to go in, you're going to do it all. You're going to be the mom. You're going to be the this. You're going to be able, you'll be the VP, and everybody was trying to do it all at once. And now there has become sort of a bit of a reckoning where women are like, no, this is not necessarily in alignment with what I want. And you might see that in women that are of an age where they're like, hey, I've only got 10 to 15 more years in this game. What do I want to do? But I also think that there is a younger generation that's watching that. Right? That's kind of like, we're actually not going to sell our souls, which I find brilliant. Cause to me, it's like, right on, girls. Cause you know what? Yeah. That's all we knew. We were like, how can I help? What can I do? And thanks for the job. Like I'm in this game for the long run, and whatever I need to do to get. So it's just, it's like, I do think you're right. It runs the gamut, and it's an awakening, which is that's like the fun place to play. You and I have talked about this a lot. It's like, that's kind of where the juice is, where women can really start to like ask those questions, and, oh, there's possibility out there. What does that look like? That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Grappling with still the challenge of, look, do I believe that you can create the life that really is soul-filling? Absolutely. Was I disheartened when I heard Michelle Obama say that you can have it all, but it comes in chapters? and I get that. I get that, because as a mom of a 2.5-year-old who does not like sleep so much, and it is hard, and it is hard to find that balance. As a solopreneur, you're doing a million things. It's so different than, say, if you are in the corporate world. In the corporate world, you might be at the demand of the clients or the board or whatever. There's so much that's going on for everybody. And one, let's have more empathy for each other and more compassion. and then two, what is the feeling? If we can get in touch with truly that feeling that allows you to feel alive, let that guide you. To say that I can have confidence that right now, maybe I can't have all these things. Maybe I can have some of these things, and I'm still working towards finding space for these other things. And at the same time, too, we also think it's got to be this shape. It's got to look exactly like this, but be open to other possibilities, that you need more time. Don't devalue 5 minutes. And I know that like 5 minutes, like that doesn't sound like very much at all, but then you just disregarded the 5 minutes you could have had to take a few deep breaths and to maybe pour yourself a cup of water or use the restroom or something like that. And we forget about those little tiny moments to be so present that this is giving you something you do really want. This is giving you some of that airspace, or this is giving you an opportunity to be with your child for an extra few minutes, or this is giving you this. And it just might not look like the thing you really thought it was going to. And that's part of the ever evolving, and it's part of the redefining of what does ambition look like for me today. And it doesn't need to be a daily thing. I know that there's other stuff we do on a daily basis to understand that, but like, what does ambition look like for me in this season or in this chapter of my life, whether you do 5-year chapters or 3-year chapters.
Yes. Well, and when you have women that come to you, do you have ways, tricks, things that you can tell them to kind of, how do they get in touch with their intuition? Like, what are some, and I mean, and let me just say this too, by the way, you are a prolific writer. I read your newsletter every time it comes out, and I find your insights into some of this stuff is really, really, it's like spot on. But when you talk about intuition and when you're working with your clients, you're in a fast-paced environment, right? And I know that you've had people that you've worked with in your past that are probably, like you said, clients that you've had for years. So is there anything you give them as kind of a way to really sort of bring themselves back to that home, to then be able to think more clearly?
Yeah, you can never underestimate time and space. Really,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you have to meditate for an hour, 2 hours, or anything like that. In fact, I think that what works more realistically in our schedule are just a couple minutes of clearing your mind, creating some of that space for yourself. And once you notice how good that feels for you, you do create more space to be able to be more intentional, to be able to clear your mind a little bit more or slow it down a bit. And then values. I think that that's one thing that I, for the longest time, didn't realize I had my own values. I mean, I always knew that I was had a strong work ethic value. But other than that, it was the company's values and, innovation, service, quality, and thought were sort of like drilled into me.
Yes. Oh my God. That just came back to me. Yeah. Yes.
So when I discovered that I had my own values, there was so much, again, freedom, but opening up, confidence.
Yeah.
And a little bit more curiosity too. Because the interesting thing was when I first did my values exercise, my top two were work ethic and then self-care. And the exercise that we did was you got to rate how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you honoring this value on a daily basis? Well, my work ethic was like a 20, and then my self-care was like a 2. And then I realized that they were always going to be in constant conflict with each other. The more I put into work, time-wise, then the less time that I have for self-care. But they both had the same energy. When I am filling myself up and recovering and regenerating and rewarding myself in other ways, which is also like social side of things too, that was filling my soul. When I worked at a rewarding and impactful pace and with the people that I wanted to work with, even if that was late at night or crazy hours, that was fulfilling. That was a great energy. And that's where my soulfulness value came from. And so I also encourage people, get so creative about your values, because your values are like your fingerprint. They are yours. They're not anybody else's. My second value is from Tara Moore's book, Playing Big. There are apparently 2 words for fear in the Hebrew language. One is pashad, and please forgive me if I, mispronounce these. And that's the actual genuine fear for your life, like it's being threatened. And the other is yara, Y-I-R-A-H. And that is the fear of stepping into something greater than yourself. And I realized that is in relation to religion. And so stepping into the presence of God, or stepping into the presence of what that belief is for you. But I can't help but open my hands up when I say it and like allow myself to be exposed. And what I picture every time I say the word yara is me stepping up to a podium and speaking. And your mind is so complex, but also quite simple. And what I learned was that me establishing this value of yara, of always wanting to step into that presence that is greater to myself, is that is exciting for me. Again, it goes back to a feeling. And so if I start to feel those butterflies in my stomach and my brain wants to go, something's going on in your body, that must be fear, that must be anxiety, I can say, no, 1 second. And I chant yara 3 times in my head. It's a yara, yara, yara. And it clears it, because it reconnects to excitement versus anxiety. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier as well. Which voice do you want to listen to?
Right. Well, it is a choice, right? I mean, I think that it takes many of us many years to get there, right? Where you finally realize, oh, so I get to create my experience here. But I think what's also, and the point that you brought up was, I thought, really profound, which is taking that time to ask yourself. Like, the one question that always comes up with clients that I find I remember having a hard time answering, and I know they do often, when you say, well, what do you want? People are like, well, I don't know. Like, they haven't had, and it's not that they don't have it in them, and it's not that people don't understand their values. They just haven't voiced it before. They haven't excavated that yet. And that's the point of like entry, right?
Yeah.
Where people get to that place. But okay, so Carrie, you and I could talk, for more hours than we care to even mention. But I want to hear about what is coming up for you. What's coming up next in your practice? I'm going to be showing or putting the links to everything, Carrie, in the show notes. But just let the listeners know kind of what you're up to right now.
I have really tapped into this topic of ambition without self-abandonment. And a lot of that goes back to my own journey. And also there's so much there for allowing not just women, everybody to reconnect with self and to understand what is my definition of ambition right now. And how do I go after that sustainably? You might still be exhausted, but how do you sustain that? So how do we live this life that we really, really want, but without killing ourselves, without killing our soul? And so right now I'm focused on being in discussion with people about that, and group discussions, being in individual discussions, and allowing that to really help guide the work that I'm doing.
I love it. Well, and like I said, anybody can check out what Carrie's up to, but Carrie, you are doing really important work. You know that, I love you, and that everything you do is amazing to me, but you are going to continue, I think, to really bring a lot of joy into people's lives when they realize there's an other side to it. Like I really do feel like you're unveiling a lot of things that people just aren't intuitively aware of. And once they become more aware of it, they're going to fly. So anybody that has the opportunity to work with you is going to be very lucky. So I just thank you. I thank you so much for coming on and for sharing everything with us. And, I'll keep in contact with you and see how it's going. You might have to come and give us an update at some point. Come back.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime. And thank you, Noelle. And have obviously always admired both your mentorship as well as just you as a human being. So thank you for allowing me to join you here, and we will indeed stay in touch.
Yes, we will. All right. That's it for now. Until next time. Thank you for listening to The Change Effect. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode, so more women like you can find us and take their next step toward creating a life they love.